Hello friends, beautiful greetings of this lovely day to all of you. Dear friends, today I Kunal Nagpal would like to welcome you once again to this amazing economic forum, Nagpal Economic Academia. Dear friends, today we are basically going to consider various parameters of the Indian economy with respect to the developments taking place in the global scenario. And we will be able to understand that why Indian economy is being differentiated in terms of performance if we draw the comparative analysis with the performance of the other economies across the globe. Hence, we would be able to come to know about the strengths which basically differentiate Indian economy and helps it to stand out among its peers. So, my dear friends, if we talk specifically about the current year, that is 2023, the world expects the economy, that is the entire global economy in 2023, to be worse off than the previous year. But India might be largely spared the worst because of its strong credentials and inherent strengths, as per the renowned experts. So, we are also aware of the fact that the recession might engulf the entire global economy in this particular year. And as the symptoms linger, India actually counts on its very strong immunity. So, my dear friends, perma-crisis, Collins English Dictionary's word of the year for 2022, captured the economic environment for the period. The term, referring to an extended period of instability and insecurity, may well capture the atmosphere of this year as well. Because we are very aware that the global scenario is actually getting intensified with each passing day. Obviously, because of the very understandable reasons like the Russia's invasion of Ukraine and this war, this geopolitical crisis is actually getting intensified. Moreover, the rising enmity between various nations across the globe is actually taking a toll on the overall global peace, also having a very adverse impact on the economic performance if we talk in holistic terms. Moreover, the supply chain disruptions are also a very major factor which is leading to a lot of economic turmoil worldwide. And most importantly, the health crisis, that is the COVID, the impacts of that COVID crisis has actually engulfed the entire global economy, though the global economy is trying to recover from those impacts, but still it would take time. Hence, 2023 is basically expected to be the year in which the global recession might engulf various economies across the globe. Next, we are also aware that because of global inflation, various central banks worldwide are constantly raising their interest rates, that is, through the monetary tightening policies. Now, obviously, this is having a very major after effect, which is very adverse in nature, hampering the overall growth of the GDP across the globe for many economies. So, my dear friends, the issues that caused concerns last year, that is 2022, have been inflation, slowing growth, geopolitical conflicts, and business uncertainty, among others, still hang above the global economy's neck like the sword of the Damocles. A new ingredient has been added to the volatile mix in 2023, that is, impending recession. Moreover, dear guys, as we are quite aware of the fact that Syria has recently got affected with a very major earthquake. So that has also been causing and is expected to intensify the problems related to the international trade of various countries with Syria. So, my dear friends, the recession fears are being felt around the world thanks to a markedly unpredictable and volatile global environment. So because of the growing inflationary pressures and higher interest rates by major central banks across the globe, Bloomberg Economics basically expects a worldwide growth of 2.4% for the year 2023. And barring the crisis years of 2009 and 2020, which all of us are quite well aware of, that is the Lehman Brothers crisis in 2009 and the COVID crisis in 2020. So bearing these particular crisis years, Bloomberg Economics says that this is the slowest rate since 1993. Moreover, the trade analysts say this would be the third worst performance of the global economy in the past 3 decades. So this is really a very alarming situation for the entire globe, my dear friends. So this particular crisis, this particular very, very sensitive period is actually following the contractions of 2009 and 2020. The World Bank has said that the global gross domestic product would probably increase by 1.7% this year, about half the pace forecast in June. This even before a recession has set in. Yes, this particular figure is even before a recession has set in. So just imagine that if the recession engulfs the major economies across the globe, what would happen to the global GDP? Now, the million-dollar question puzzling many economists the world over is, are the current recessionary pressures strong enough to give a body blow to several already fragile economies? I repeat my question. So, the million-dollar question puzzling many economists the world over is, are the current recessionary pressures strong enough to give a body blow to several already fragile economies? Now, what are the signs from the developed economies? A basic discussion on global economic slowdown cannot be complete without talking about the world's largest economy, that is the United States of America. According to a survey by the Wall Street Journal, most economists at 23 large financial institutions have basically predicted that a recession would hit the US in 2023 and that millions of Americans will lose their jobs. And my dear friends, we have been noticing this particular scenario of the layoff across various global MNCs. 2 of the 23 firms expected the recession to come later in 2024. 5, that is Credit Suisse, Goldman Sachs, HSBC, JP Morgan Chase, and Morgan Stanley said the United States of America would actually manage to avoid a downturn altogether. Now, in order to curb the inflationary pressures, the US Federal Reserve had raised its interest rates. the jury is still out on whether the move has actually achieved its goal. The industry circles are abuzz with the view that the Fed might raise the rates again this particular year. The Federal Reserve has actually hinted at a continued tighter monetary policy even in 2023 as the labor market remains strong and wage pressures could result in higher demand, says Rumki Majumdar, economist, Deloitte, India. So such a move can actually aggravate the risk of recession in several geographies across the globe. At the recently held World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, that is in Switzerland, central bankers in other developed economies have also said they would keep raising the interest rates in order to battle inflation. And the other prominent developed economy, that is the United Kingdom, is probably going through a winter of discontent already as the year begins with strikes and workers demanding the pay hikes, says Ms. Majumdar. The UK is actually facing a double whammy of a contracting economy and rising inflation, which is currently around 40-year high levels due to surging energy and food prices. Germany, the largest economy in Europe, is also facing the heat. The key macroeconomic indicators point towards a decline in the growth rate in Germany. The industrial production and exports are actually contracting fast, and inflation is at elevated levels owing to mounting energy prices, she says. So as of now, all eyes are on the fire-breathing economic dragon in Asia. So my dear friends, China, a major growth engine of the world, actually has the ability to sway the world either way. But its growth has been derailed significantly after a new round of COVID-19 wave crippled the world's so-called factory China, which is also the second largest economy. The International Monetary Fund, that is the IMF, has actually warned that the year 2023 is actually going to be bleaker than the one gone by for the entire global economy. So if we go into the details and we ask the reason why so, my dear friends, it is basically because the three big economies, that is the US, European Union and China, are all slowing down simultaneously. International Monetary Fund's Managing Director Ms. Kristalina Georgieva had said in an interview to the CBS on January 22, "We actually expect 1/3 of the world economy to be in recession. Even the countries that are not in recession, it would feel like a recession for hundreds of millions of people across the globe." So while the United States of America may end up avoiding a recession, the overall situation actually looks bleaker in Europe, which has been hit hard by the war in Ukraine. Ms. Georgieva said, "Half of the European Union will be in recession." But now, what is the basic reason for optimism? Yes, you have heard me right. In such a pessimistic situation, I am talking about optimism and hope. So let's explore. One saving grace for now, my dear friends, is that Bloomberg reports that Germany and the United Kingdom, Europe's two biggest economies, may have also skirted a recession in the fourth quarter of the year. Technically, a recession, which actually means an overall contraction of the economy, has not happened yet, says Badri Narayan Gopalakrishnan, lead advisor trade and commerce, Niti Aayog. He further says North America is actually expected to get into a recession by the third quarter of this year, and the European Union by the last quarter of this particular year. Most of the developed countries are actually expected to get into a recession by this year's end, while the developing countries may actually face a deceleration in growth. Now, let's talk about our domestic economy, that is India. What are the signs prevailing in the domestic economy? My dear friends, that brings us to India, our motherland. Will the country also see a recession? And if yes, when will it actually happen, so that we are well prepared of? Now, my dear friends, there is a good news. According to the latest data released by the National Statistical Office, real GDP grew 6.3% year-on-year in the second quarter of 2022-23. It has actually estimated 7% growth this financial year and 4.5% for the second half of the financial year. The Reserve Bank of India has actually said the growth concerns would assume primacy in 2023 as the global economy actually slows on the back of tightening financial conditions worldwide. So, taking the overall macroeconomic numbers into consideration, the Reserve Bank of India in its December policy review said that the real GDP growth for the year 2022-23 was actually projected at 6.8%, with the third quarter at 4.4% and fourth quarter at 4.2%. The risks are actually evenly balanced. Even after this revision in our growth projection for the year 2022-23, India will still be among the fastest growing major economies in the world, it said. The government has actually reiterated that the country's GDP growth was resilient and inflation would actually moderate. However, my dear friends, the fact remains that over the past 2 decades, India's growth cycles have become increasingly synchronized with that of advanced economies. So, while the domestic demand has actually stayed relatively stable and resilient so far, it will be tested in the year 2023 by the overall weakening industrial activity as per the experts. Moreover, besides, global situations can change suddenly and make all the calculations go awry, just like Russia's invasion of Ukraine has actually shown. And this particular statement is actually very important because in such an unpredictable scenario, the unforeseeable factors are actually very, very important to be considered, which might actually reverse the overall expectations. And in today's situation existing across the globe, the uncertainty and the level of sensitivity has actually crossed its peak level. So obviously, my dear friends, nothing can be said to be certain as of now. My dear friends, most economists are actually of the view that India will probably dodge a recession. Going by the assumption that the government has actually a better view of the situation than most others, India should brace for some impact around the middle of the year. There is actually no clarity on how big a hit, if it happens, it would be. While an HSBC economist had actually forecast India's financial year 2024 growth to basically dip to 5.5% from 6.8% in the financial year 2023. A Reserve Bank of India survey of professional forecasters released in December had actually pegged the growth at 6% in 2023-24. Now let's have a broad-minded discussion on the fundamentals which are to the rescue. The industry observers basically highlight the inherent strengths of the country's economy, that is India, saying these will actually act as the breakwaters and keep India relatively protected. Hence, these factors are playing a paramount role in boosting India's immunity against the very, very sensitive, uncertain, and unpredictable global economic scenario. And that's why India is being regarded as the bright spot in the gloomy global economic scenario. Mr. Gopal Krishnan of Niti Aayog basically says that India's fundamentals are very strong and coupling with the rest of the world is not that deep. Therefore, by and large, India will actually continue to grow at 6 to 7%. However, the key export-oriented sectors such as information technology, textiles and apparel may face a slight recession or zero growth towards probably the end of this year. He says the recent policy initiatives taken to boost overall investments like the production-linked incentive schemes, government expenditure in several areas and welfare scheme to keep the consumption intact may actually come to our rescue. So these are the strong fundamental reasons, the basic factors which are helping India to actually develop a protective shield around its economy, helping it to actually protect itself from the adverse global economic scenario. Hence, I repeat these strong fundamentals. These are the production-linked incentive schemes, that is the PLI schemes, government expenditure in several areas, and thirdly, the welfare schemes to keep the consumption intact. So my dear friends, the global recession may also imply a fall in imports, which could actually balance out the fall in exports. Therefore, we expect the GDP, that is the gross domestic product, to grow quite well. He further adds. Moreover, the experts agree that based on several economic parameters, India's resilience is actually better than those of several advanced economies. Mr. Majumdar of Deloitte India is of the view that recent domestic economic indicators highlight this particular strength. The private sector's balance sheet has improved a lot over the past couple of years. The corporate deleveraging has improved the bank's overall balance sheet scenario, hence aiding the banking system to actually come out of the asset quality cycle. Hence, India will not enter a recession. Of course, India will not remain unaffected as the exports decline and aggressive monetary policies by the central banks across the world result in a global liquidity squeeze. There is the good news, my dear friends, that India may protect itself. India will protect itself as per the present scenario of the intensity of our strong fundamentals. India may prevent itself from recession, but its overall international trade with respect to the exports of certain items across various global economies may get affected, because the recession is engulfing the entire globe. So obviously the international trade would get affected. But the economy will see a strong rebound in H2 2023, says Mr. Majumdar. Some headwinds have actually been to India's advantage, she says. For instance, a combination of geopolitical developments and global exigencies presented India with opportunities to become an export hub and an investment destination in the manufacturing and services space. I repeat, a combination of the geopolitical developments and global exigencies presented India with the opportunities to become an export hub and an investment destination in the manufacturing and services space. Obviously, we know the reason, because we are very well aware of the fact that many MNCs across the globe are actually disinvesting their operations from the Chinese economy. So obviously they are considering India and Vietnam as the best available alternatives when they are removing their operations, their manufacturing operations from China. So India has a huge opportunity to actually diversify its manufacturing operations base. The low asset values have led the companies to basically consolidate the positions and enter the new segments. Defying trends, mergers and acquisitions registered record deals in the year 2022. Moreover, other experts also have an upbeat view of the Indian economy. Let's have a look. Mr. Jan Christian Vestre, co-founder of Global Trade Research Initiative, says India's export performance for the year 2022 actually calls for celebration, as merchandise exports touched $450 billion for the first time. And this is actually 13.7% higher than the export turnover of 2021, he adds. Moreover, India's exports in terms of goods and services basically touched a new high of $701 billion in the tenure of January to December 2022. The merchandise trade that in terms of imports and exports touched a new high of $1,173 billion in January to December 2022. And this particular achievement basically comes despite the gloomy conditions worldwide. So just try to visualize that how strategically planned and well laid out our policies are. How dynamic and visionary our leaders are, who are able to create such miraculous achievements and excellent prospects in terms of the overall economic stature in such a gloomy global economic scenario. Just try to understand the basic charismatic leadership style being practiced by our renowned leaders. And my dear friends, we won't be able to actually conceptualize that had the situations been normal, our country would have actually created unbelievable milestones. This is actually a reality, though it is difficult to believe, but it's actually a reality, and we should be actually proud of being We should actually be proud of our very, very supportive, visionary, and broad-minded leaders who are extremely perseverant and charismatic. So this also prepares us for a tough year ahead which lies in front of us as the GDP growth in major economies across the globe actually slows to less than 3% in the year 2023. Mr. Srivastava adds. Now, let's try to develop a very broad-minded understanding regarding the aspect of layoff and stagflation risks. My dear friends, as we have been observing, these are actually the very sensitive and critical times of mass layoffs across various renowned global MNCs across the globe. As we have been seeing that in the companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, we have been seeing that the people are being asked to leave the organization in masses. And this is actually a gloomy situation, and this is obviously the after effect of a very, very adverse and unfortunate global economic scenario across the globe. So my dear friends, as the pandemic-led demand boom rapidly fades, the global companies are actually sacking the workers in thousands. The employees in India haven't been spared either. These layoffs will jolt consumption patterns and further weigh down on the manufacturing sector. Mr. Siddharth Jain, partner Kearney, says most of the findings have actually been in the tech sector, which represents only 2% of the workforce in the industry. So, it is not a broader indicator of the labor market. The gross domestic product of the United States of America is actually projected to remain flat in the year 2023, while Europe and Eurasia are likely to see a contraction. This will surely impact the consumption in these geographies and impact all consumption-oriented exporting sectors of India like automobile, gems and jewelry, textiles and apparel. We see a counterbalance to this downside in the United States of America and China pursuing the policies and positions limiting the overall bilateral trade and investment, Mr. Jan adds. I repeat, the GDP of the USA is actually projected to remain flat in the year 2023, while Europe and Eurasia are likely to see a contraction. And this will surely impact the consumption in these geographies and hence impact all the consumption-oriented exporting sectors of India like automobiles, gems and jewelry, textiles and apparel. We see a counterbalance to this downside in the US and China pursuing the policies and positions limiting the bilateral trade and investment, Mr. Jan adds. He further says, India is actually largely insulated from this trend, and this is again a great news. The goods exports from our country actually form only 13% of India's GDP. So, my dear friends, the manufacturing sector is actually more dependent on the local consumption growth. We project the global private consumption to actually slow down to 1.5 to 2% in the year 2023 from 3.4% in the year 2022. The developed economies will see a sharper degrowth and there would be a natural cascade in the consumption of industries. This will obviously have a very adverse impact on manufacturing, but not necessarily cripple it. We will expect India's GDP to actually grow at a healthy 6% plus rate. He also rules out a stagflation risk for the Indian economy. So as long as India's inherent macroeconomic strengths are not weakened, the country can actually hope to have enough ammunition to basically stave off the effects of a major global slowdown. So, my dear friends, we have been able to understand in a very, very broad-minded perspective that how India's strong macroeconomic fundamentals are actually acting to develop a strong protective shield around its economy, helping it to insulate itself from the adverse and gradually intensifying global economic scenario. Though many developed countries have not been able to save themselves from such a global economic earthquake. But India, being an emerging market, being a developing economy, has so strong macroeconomic fundamentals that it is able to save itself to a very great extent from such a turmoil. So this is really a very, very important point, a very, very important aspect to be proud of. So, my dear friends, let's move forward in our discussion, wherein we are basically going to analyze how is India going down the right road. Having turned 75 last year, wherein India celebrated the Amrit Mahotsav, embarking the Amrit Kal, India now stands at a turning point in its history. Yes, you have heard me right. India stands at a turning point in its history. It has actually set itself an ambitious target of basically becoming a developed nation in the next 25 years. This is the very, very strong vision being developed by our great visionary leaders. This is really marvelous that if in such unfavorable conditions we can develop such a strong vision with firm conviction. It really speaks a lot about the overall perseverance, confidence, and the really extraordinary plans Indian leaders have for our motherland. So, my dear friends, the pace of growth has been actually very reassuring. India has achieved one of the world's highest growth rates and quintupled per capita income since 2000. The country could actually emerge as the world's third biggest economy by the end of this decade, with its GDP surpassing that of the United States of America by the year 2060. Hence, by focusing on a few areas that actually require the investment and consistent action, India is actually well placed to seize the moment and therefore transform itself into a leading global economic powerhouse. Yes, you are hearing me right. India could actually transform itself into a leading global economic powerhouse while ensuring the inclusive and sustainable growth for its population. Now let's talk sector-wise. First, in terms of manufacturing, the manufacturing sector will actually play a pivotal role in achieving the ambition of becoming the $5 trillion economy. Basically, through its Make in India initiative and the production-linked incentive schemes, the government of India is actually accelerating India's transformation into a global manufacturing and export hub. The automotive components, electronics, machinery, pharmaceuticals, and petroleum products are some of the sectors that actually show immense potential. There are the key aspects that basically need attention. That is, resilience against the supply chain disruptions, robust infrastructure, enabling competitiveness, and going green. Now let's discuss them one by one. The first key aspect that needs to be given attention is the resilience against the supply chain disruptions. My dear friends, the measures such as scenario planning at scale and investing in the digital solutions powered by artificial intelligence and machine learning are the need of the hour. That is, we need to go in actually parallel with the developments taking place across the globe. And here, if we talk in terms of technology, artificial intelligence and machine learning are actually the need of the hour. Hence, we should incorporate the digitalization across various sectors of the economy. Moreover, the second aspect, that is robust infrastructure. So talking about robust infrastructure, improving the last mile connectivity, reducing the logistics costs, and increasing the market competitiveness need extensive focus. 33% capex hike in the recently tabled budget expected to give the required thrust to the expansion of road and rail networks, airports, and ports. Next, in terms of enabling competitiveness, promoting the differentiated ease of doing business for investors is actually very important. So this actually entails developing investor-friendly policies and helping the investors align their businesses with the global production networks. And now, a very important aspect is obviously going green, because we need to take this particular sustainable development goal into consideration, because this is actually the emerging need of the global economy, which is being given utmost priority by various economies across the globe, since it's the very, very important aspect which actually needs to be prioritized. So, in order to assure holistic development, we need to take this particular aspect in consideration. So, India has actually set itself a target of achieving net zero carbon emissions by the year 2070. It has already embarked on the shift to a lower carbon model, and while it is still reliant on coal and oil, it is also the world's third largest producer of renewable energy, with 40% of its electricity derived from the renewable sources. This is really an excellent development, my dear guys. Now, going forward in this particular aspect, the launch of the National Green Hydrogen Mission will actually enable India to harness its abundant access to solar energy and therefore become a global hub for the production and export of green hydrogen. The heavy investment in battery and pumped storage is also expected to go a long way in actually facilitating the uptake and distribution of clean energy. Further, while bioenergy has actually begun to aid India's decarbonization efforts, the private sector investment is actually critical to actually strengthen the supply chains. I repeat, while the bioenergy has actually begun to aid India's decarbonization efforts, the private sector investment is actually critical to strengthen the supply chains, ensure viable long-term sourcing of the biomass for power plants, and streamline the price of this renewable fuel. Now, next very important aspect regarding the holistic development of the Indian economy, which really needs to be given utmost attention, is workforce of the future. My dear friends, in order to turbocharge its growth, India actually needs to take full advantage of its working age population, that is, giving the utmost priority to devising the policies which are very friendly and very conducive to enhance the overall demographic dividend of the economy. India needs to take full advantage of its working age population, which is actually projected to become the largest in the world by 2030. The reforms are needed to boost the participation of women in the labor force, which saw a sharp decline in the wake of the pandemic. Yes, the challenging times came before our economy, but we withstood those times with utmost valor and great determination. And obviously, as we know, that gender inequality is the very significant factor playing a paramount role to actually slow down the economic progress. Hence, we should devise our policies which actually encourage women empowerment, equal growth of both the genders in the economy. And our respected Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has actually been devising policies keeping this particular point as the focus, as the focal point, ensuring the holistic development of the economy. So the challenge India faces goes beyond merely drawing on and engaging the vast labor pool. It also needs to make its workforce future ready. In order to tap into the latent talent in the heartland, state and central governments must work closely to establish the regional hubs for vocational training. Yes, my dear friends, after women empowerment, next particular point which needs to be given utmost attention is actually to encourage the vocational training. Establishment of the regional hubs for vocational training in order to prepare the generation of our country with the major developments occurring across the globe, making them future ready. How to actually move with time, how to actually prepare themselves with the upcoming trend and the ongoing trend of digitization, like we had discussed the aspects of artificial intelligence and machine learning, for example. These are actually very important areas to be given utmost attention. And obviously our very considerate government has actually implemented certain measures in the budget for upskilling and reskilling programs. So while the National Education Policy 2020 is a step in the right direction to reboot the formal education sector. The curriculum needs to reflect the contemporary advancements in science and technology and interdisciplinary training, while also fostering the industry academia collaborations for practical exposure and the apprenticeships. This will actually help in building a strong culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. A consistent focus on improving the ease of doing business, more inclusive and coordinated development of the large-scale industrial infrastructure across the country, and innovative measures in order to boost investment would actually go a long way in creating a smooth passage to the holistic and sustainable development. I repeat, a consistent focus on improving the ease of doing business, more inclusive and coordinated development of large-scale industrial infrastructure across the country, and innovative measures to actually boost investment would basically go a long way in creating a smooth passage to the overall holistic and sustainable development. While the government of India has laid a very strong foundation, the other key stakeholders, that is the corporates, non-governmental organizations, that is the NGOs, and citizens of the country, will actually need to collaborate with all their might in order to make the most of this particular opportunity and hence realize a bright India at the rate of 100. That's what we have been propagating throughout our sessions, that our very, very visionary leaders are the backbone of the overall development of our motherland. But at the same time, we, the citizens, the corporates, the NGOs, all of us should actually work as a team. We should work as a family, working very, very hard to foster the overall development of the society. Hence aiding the responsible governmental authorities to achieve the goals and milestones and the great dreams and aspirations they have set for the economy. So that actually defines moving towards the societal construction. My dear friends, Mr. Moritz is actually the global chairman of PricewaterhouseCoopers, that is PwC, and he will be speaking at the Economic Times Global Business Summit on February 17 to 18 in New Delhi. And this is a very important update because we would be able to draw very, very important inferences through his very visionary insights. And Mr. Christian is the chairperson of the PwC India. This is for your kind knowledge. Now, my dear friends, after this great in-depth analysis, I would like to move forward considering a very important aspect in this particular line. That is, India can actually achieve the net zero well ahead of the target, though it has set 2070 the year by which India could achieve its basic mission or basic goal of net zero. That is the zero carbon emissions by 2070, but its present efforts basically help us to understand that India can actually achieve the net zero well ahead of the target. Isn't it encouraging? My dear friends, India could actually achieve its target of net zero greenhouse gas emissions well ahead of 2070. The International Renewable Energy Agency Director General Mr. Francesco La Camera has said, and this has been stated by the international economic leader of International Renewable Energy Agency. So this is really very, very encouraging. He said, my impression is that India will actually achieve the targets such that the net zero emissions by 2070 and 500 gigawatts of clean energy capacity by 2030 well in advance. As head of the 168-member strong Abu Dhabi-based intergovernmental agency for the global transition to renewable energy, the former Italian climate negotiator is actually engaged in identifying the ways to basically help the countries to collectively act to slow down the global warming. He has actually argued that restricting the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius to prevent the worsening the impacts of climate change will basically require ensuring that countries have the infrastructure required to make the energy transition possible. Broadly, the arena, that is, the International Renewable Energy Agency chief highlighted the three important pillars, that is, physical infrastructure, legal and policy infrastructure, and the institutional and professional skill infrastructure. Mr. La Camera said his overall assessment of India's progress is actually based on the work that is being done in the country to basically put this infrastructure in place. India has already been working on actually de-stressing and renewing of the grid system. On our recent visit, we had the chance to be in the control room. The people working there are actually very well aware of where and how they have to intervene, and they are intervening, he said. And referring to the professional and technological infrastructure, Mr. La Camera, who attended the India Energy Week in Bangalore, basically referred to solar stovetop and ethanol blended petrol E20 that the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji referred to his inaugural address. Now, these particular initiatives presented by the Prime Minister were actually something new. It also showcases some kind of technological achievements, he said. The arena chief spoke of greening the system. The Indian authorities actually introduced the rules that are basically facilitating a massive request of investment in hydrogen to clean and green the steel industry and other industries. The Indian authorities have actually maintained that the goals have been set with a clear eye on what was actually feasible. The technological and regulatory developments as well as the policy signals for directing the investment in green and clean energy basically indicate that India does have room to improve on the timeline of its targets. Now, this is a very important highlight which basically helps us to understand the crux of his vision for India. That is, the technological and regulatory developments as well as the policy signals for directing the investment in green and clean energy basically indicate that India does have room to actually improve on the timeline for its targets. Now, after this great insightful analysis, let's try to understand that UK's planned transfer of jet engine tech historic as claimed by the minister. And this has been claimed by the UK-based minister. My dear friends, United Kingdom's planned transfer of jet engine technology to India will actually be historic as it will be the largest such transfer by Britain to any country and will actually empower India to export the future jets on its own terms, hence enhancing its overall sovereignty. UK Minister of State for Defence Mr. Alex Chalk said at the UP Global Investors Summit. My dear friends, this renowned UK personality Mr. Chalk was actually referring to UK's transfer of jet technology to India, which was agreed upon in April last year when the United Kingdom Prime Minister Mr. Boris Johnson visited India. Jet engine advanced core technology is basically a key know-how that India has been looking for in order to cut the dependence on foreign suppliers. Mr. Chalk said a sovereign and resilient India was actually very important for the entire world, considering the growing global dangers and China's belligerence challenging the international rules-based order. He hailed the United Kingdom and Uttar Pradesh partnership and shared the British businesses have actually signed a total of 7 MOUs with 165 million pounds, that is 1,642 crore rupees in various sectors in the state. So calling UP, that is Uttar Pradesh, the fastest growing state in the country and a hub of research and development, the likened UP to UK, saying it is as hungry for its future as the United Kingdom is. And tomorrow, I look forward to actually emphasize it to the Indian defense colleagues that the United Kingdom stands steady and ready to commit to something truly historic. The largest ever transfer of jet engine technology from Britain to any other nation in our history. Technology that will actually give India sovereign, make in India, and intellectual capabilities that will basically ensure it actually becomes one of just 6 countries in the world to actually own this cutting edge capability. And that will actually empower this country, that is India, to export the future fighters on India's terms, in India's interests, around the world, no export condition, no strings attached, sovereign Indian capability, Mr. Chalk said. So, this renowned UK personality, Mr. Chalk, further states, a sovereign, self-reliant, resilient India with a sovereign defense jet industry to match is actually not just good for India and the region, it is actually vital for the entire world, and there is a growing inescapable feeling that the whole world is actually becoming more dangerous. Yes, the whole world is actually becoming more dangerous because of the intensifying global situations. And I know this audience and this CM, Mr. Yogi, doesn't need to be reminded that China's increasing belligerence actually poses systematic challenges to the international rules-based order. The UK minister said. So my dear friends, we have been able to develop a very broad-minded and excellent insights as being presented by the UK Minister, Mr. Alex Chalk, in the UP Global Investors Summit, wherein he very beautifully illustrates and presents his mindset that how the deal and MOUs signed between UP and UK will actually enhance the overall prospects not only for India but actually for the entire world, because there is a growing, inescapable feeling that the whole world is actually becoming more dangerous. And keeping into consideration the fact that China's increasing belligerence actually poses systematic challenges to the international rules-based order. And this has been very well presented by this UK minister. So he has been very, very considerate and far-sighted while presenting this particular insight. That is, UK's planned transfer of jet engine technology to India will be historic, as it will be the largest such transfer by Britain to any country and will actually empower India to export future jets on its own terms, hence enhancing its overall sovereignty. Now, my dear friends, let's try to understand another major development. That is, Total Energies' move to pause Adani hydrogen joint venture play could actually impact $6 billion of debt funding. My dear friends, Total Energies' decision to actually pause the $4 billion investment in a green hydrogen venture with the Adani Group pending audits of the Indian conglomerate accused of fraud by an US investor will actually impact the project's overall growth funding, as the French energy major was to also guarantee half of its debt, people in the know said. I repeat, the Total Energies decision to pause $4 billion investment in a green hydrogen venture with Adani Group pending audits of the Indian conglomerate accused of fraud by an US investor, as per the Hindenburg report, will actually impact the project's growth funding, as the French energy major was to also guarantee half of its debt, people in the know said. And my dear friends, this could actually be a big blow for the new venture's timelines of production of green hydrogen at $1 per kg by the year 2030. Last week, Total said it would actually not immediately proceed with its latest venture that actually involved taking a 25% stake in Adani New Industries Limited, that is ANIL, a subsidiary of Adani Enterprises, as part of an ambitious hydrogen co-development with Adani Enterprises. In June last year, that is in 2022, Adani New Industries Limited, that is ANIL, and Total Energies had actually outlined a capex plan of $50 billion to actually set up a 2.5 million metric tons per annum of green hydrogen manufacturing capacity over the next 10 years, with the first phase of 1.0 MMTPA expected to be commissioned before 2030. And what was not publicly disclosed was that, as per the deal terms, Total Energy had made a total of $10 billion capital commitment to the hydrogen venture, standing as the guarantor to 50% of the project's debt, translating to $6 billion, people cited above said. And the deal is yet to close. The detailed questionnaires sent to Total Energies and Adani Group on February 9 did not actually elicit any response till the press time on Sunday. This project was actually announced, but nothing has been signed. And for now, it won't be signed. Total Energies Chief Executive Mr. Patrick Poyen told the reporters on Wednesday, it actually makes no sense to add more projects until there is a proper clarity. Total Energies has just over $3 billion of investments with Adani, including in gas distribution and solar projects, which it has played down as a small 2.4% slice of its total capital commitments. Mr. Adani has other things to deal with now. It's actually just good sense to basically pause the things while the audit goes forward. Mr. Poyen said, that is very correctly mentioning that the things basically need to be prioritized now. That is, what does the present situation actually demand? And my dear friends, as Mr. Poyen said, the present situation actually demands for actually pausing the things while the audit goes forward, because of the recent development which has been occurred, which has basically got occurred, that is the acquisitions being framed by the Hindenburg. He said, Total Energies is actually not in charge of the financial health of Adani Group, with whom it has a number of joint ventures. So, the 50% guarantee element was a big benefit for Adani to actually raise the funds, as Total enjoys a far superior credit rating, said an official in the know. And the overall economics of the arrangement had been agreed upon. Hopefully, this review will end soon and not get abandoned so that the project can actually kickstart. And Ventura Securities in a detailed report on Adani Group in July last year had actually said the AA rating of Total Energies was basically expected to help Adani New Industries Limited, that is ANIL, raise the low-cost initial funding from the global market, hence saving 150 to 200 basis points in interest costs. Total Energies is an active member of several hydrogen dedicated initiatives and the professional associations in Europe. The company is actually also an anchor sponsor of the $1.5 billion Clean Hydrogen Infrastructure Fund, which basically creates the blue hydrogen ecosystem in Europe, the stockbroking house said in the report. Adani New Enterprises Limited is basically targeting the European market for the exports of its green hydrogen, which will actually generate high margin forex income. And my dear friends, the strategic associations of Total Energies in Europe could help Adani New Industries Limited in actually getting the access to export its green hydrogen in the European market, as per the report of Ventura. Now let's try to understand the aspect of the total support in this particular scenario. Mr. Adani can actually ill afford to lose the Total Energy support, industry players said. Though profitable, Adani Green Energy is actually highly leveraged at 14 times its historical EBITDA with high capital spending. And Moody's had noted in August that a key credit risk factor for Adani Green Energy, given its debts, was any reduction in the shareholding by Total Energies. So as part of the partnership, Adani New Industries Limited was to contribute its knowledge of the Indian market, execution capabilities, operations excellence, and capital management philosophy, while Total Energies was actually to bring its understanding of the global market, credit enhancement, and financial strength to basically lower the financing costs, along with expertise in underlying technologies. So this was basically the mutual benefit this basic partnership would have led to. That is, Adani New Industries Limited was to contribute in with its knowledge of Indian market, execution capabilities, operations excellence, and capital management philosophy. While on the other hand, Total Energies was to bring its understanding of the global market, credit enhancement, and financial strength to basically lower the financing costs along with expertise in underlying technologies. So this strategic partnership would have been a great asset. Now, my dear guys, Adani New Industries Limited basically plans to manufacture green hydrogen and its downstream products such as ammonia, urea, methanol, and ethanol at its Khavda and Mundra special economic zone facilities. The Khavda site has a land bank of 71,000 acres, which has a large-scale renewable deployment potential of 20 gigawatt due to its high wind and solar resource potential. The company also plans to use the alkaline and the PEM electrolysis process to actually produce 2.5 million tons of green hydrogen annually by the year 2031 at Khavda. The electrolyzers used in the electrolysis process are to be manufactured and supplied from the Mundra Special Economic Zone facility. Mr. Jogeshnder Singh, Chief Financial Officer of Adani Enterprises, basically told Economic Times on 22nd January, "We have 40 gigawatt of land equivalent. We have been doing the solar modules for the past 5 years. We know we will produce the modules at 15 cents to 17 cents. Moreover, the low cost of energy extraction will actually help it produce hydrogen at 30 cents per kg operating costs," he had said. "We plan to bring it to the market by the first or second quarter of 2026, Mr. Singh had said. Moreover, hydrogen will be supplied from Khavda to Mundra Special Economic Zone through a 42-inch pipeline, a cost-effective way of transportation where it will be used for the production of the downstream products." Also, Total Energies has over 20 years of experience in hydrogen retailing infrastructure. It is actually operating 120 hydrogen refueling stations across Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. Now, my dear friends, let's try to understand the basic takeaways from this insightful discussion regarding the strategic alliance between Total Energies and Adani New Enterprises Limited, and how the pause in this great strategic alliance would affect the overall prospects. That is, Total's move to pause Adani hydrogen joint venture play could impact $6 billion of debt funding. The Total Energies decision to pause $4 billion investment in the green hydrogen venture with the Adani Group pending audits of the Indian conglomerate accused of fraud by an US investor Hindenburg will impact the project's growth funding, as the French energy maker Total Energy was to also guarantee half of its debt. So, let's try to understand the key takeaways. Adani Group and Total Energies have 3 existing partnerships as of now. My dear friends, in 2019, Total Energies basically acquired 37.4% of Adani Gas and 50% of the group's Dhamra LNG project. Then, in the following year, 2020, Total Energies and Adani formed a 50-50 joint venture at an enterprise value of 17,385 crore rupees for 2.3 gigawatts of solar assets. Then, in the following year, that is 2021, Total Energies picked up a 20% stake in Adani Green Energy. So, my dear friends, after this great in-depth analytical and insightful discussion regarding the pause between the two major partners, that is Total Energies and Adani New Industries Limited, giving a pause to the Adani hydrogen joint venture play. Let's try to understand another key aspect, that is how Norway supports India on its overall move towards multilateralism. My dear friends, Norway's Trade and Investment Minister, Mr. Jan Christian Vestre, has stated that his country, Norway, fully supports India's efforts in actually promoting multilateralism and the rules-based trade system. The minister praised the Indian government's overall leadership pattern at the G20 and also highlighted the importance of continuing the process of the overall globalization. Mr. Vestre said in an interview with the PTI, that is actually an initiative our government supports 100%, and we also appreciate your leadership at G20 and that you are so focused on multilateralism and that we need the rules-based trade system. Isn't it really filling us with great pride that the international organizations, the international leaders are appreciating India's extraordinary policies, my dear friends? This is the matter of great zeal, enthusiasm, and celebration. And in order to keep this pace going on, we need to keep ourselves thrilled, energized, and charged. And obviously, being the responsible citizens of the Indian economy, it's our moral duty and responsibility to actually understand the core intricacies of the overall vision our leaders have for our motherland. Hence, we should support them wholeheartedly and not engage ourselves in the short-term gossiping process, in the short-term process of slowing down the overall development of our economy, engaging in the critical discussions. This is actually not to be encouraged at all. Now, let's try to understand the views of the Norwegian minister. My dear friends, the Norwegian minister, who was actually here on a 2-day visit to India last week, said that some countries are actually turning away from the path of globalization in the current scenario of the global economy. We see now that some countries are actually turning in different directions, but it is very important now that we continue this process of globalization, free trade. Sharing is actually caring. I repeat, sharing is actually caring, and that will be beneficial for all of us. So all the initiatives from the Indian side that can actually promote this particular approach to how should we organize our world will have full support from the Norwegian side, the minister emphasized. So my dear friends, the whole discussion, the whole viewpoint of all the international leaders, international ministers, and international organizations is basically revolving around the point that the policies of the Indian economy are actually centered towards the holistic development of the entire globe. Not only for India, not only considering the self-centered development of India, the policies Indian economy is actually working on very clearly emphasizes, which everyone is able to conceptualize and understand, that these policies are basically helping the entire world to progress. So really, Our leadership is actually very, very far-sighted and extraordinary. Furthermore, the Norwegian minister spoke highly of the second India-Nordic summit which held last year, calling it a great success. He expressed pride in the joint statement made by India's Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji and the 5 Nordic Prime Ministers, which he sees as a testament to the strong ties between the two regions. He further added, "We really hope we can gather the Prime Ministers again, hopefully next time in Norway, because another thing we will follow up on right now." The minister stated that he actually feels that the ties have never been stronger than now, and there is a huge momentum driving them forward with more close cooperation in various areas, including the maritime industry, hydrogen, renewable energy, batteries, rare earth minerals, technologies, and innovations. The trade between India and Norway has actually doubled in the last 3 years, and the minister also stated that there is a huge potential for even more cooperation in the years to come. So, it is actually very important to connect the companies from India with firms from Norway so that they can work collectively and more closely together, exploring the new technologies, do the common projects, and there is a need to actually increase the common investment. Also, there are a lot of other things we can share, such as competence, knowledge, and experience, he underlined. Furthermore, India and Norway, these two major economies, have actually decided to follow up on their initiatives in the areas of fuel cell technologies, green ammonia, hydrogen, and charging infrastructure with the specific action plans, with the basic aim of translating their discussions into tangible actions. So really, this resourceful, insightful discussion helps us to understand that how the Norwegian minister is able to conceptualize the overall visionary plans and policies India has, and how Indian leaders are working very hard, not just to support their own development, but also for the holistic development of the entire globe. Hence, Norway and other economies across the globe feel fortunate to get themselves associated by developing a strategic alliance with the Indian economy. So we have basically understood that Norway's Trade and Investment Minister, Mr. Jan Christian Vestre, has stated that his country fully supports India's efforts in promoting multilateralism and a rules-based trade system. The minister further praised the Indian government's leadership at the G20 and highlighted the importance of continuing the process of globalization. Now, my dear friends, this has been a very insightful and resourceful discussion wherein we have been able to gather such relevant points regarding the recent developments taking place across the globe with respect to the Indian economy, and how India stands out across various sectors, hence showcasing its major and core areas of strength, which are the responsible factors helping India to actually foster with flying colors in today's times especially. And we have also learned that recession might weaken the global economy at a much larger scale. But India can actually prevent itself from such a recession. But the exports of India, the international trade, would get affected to a certain extent. And that's quite evident because the central banks across the globe are actually tightening their monetary policies in order to curb inflation. So, if the recession engulfs the global economy, the international trade, that is the export sector of India, would get affected to a certain extent. And we have also understood and tried to understand that which all sectors might get affected in the near future in this particular domain. So my dear friends, I really hope that you must have been able to draw very, very useful insights from this particular lecture. I would not call it a lecture, I would rather call it a two-way communication, because though this is a virtual interaction, but still our discussion, our session, I'm sure would help you to ponder on very, very significant points and help you to enhance your understanding of the core economic parameters of the Indian economy, which are very, very responsible for defining its success in such critical times existing across the globe, and how vital the SWOT analysis and pestle analysis are actually helping the Indian economy to actually frame its policies in a well-defined manner. So on this note, I would like to end my today's session, hoping you all take very, very good care of yourselves until we meet next. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.